The meeting was supposed to happen at the Amsterdam Central Library, but when Magnus Carlsen arrived, he found a different note directing him to a private chess club in the old district. His heart was racing as he realized that A.N., the mysterious sender of those coded chess puzzles, was about to reveal himself. But when Magnus walked into that dimly lit room and saw Anish Giri sitting calmly at a chessboard, everything he thought he knew about trust and friendship shattered. You see, what Magnus discovered that night would force him to question every relationship in his chess career. Because Anish wasn't just the mysterious correspondent. He was the only person standing between Magnus and certain death. And the conspiracy they were fighting was far more dangerous than either of them had imagined. Magnus stood frozen in the doorway, staring at his longtime rival and occasional friend. Anish looked up from the chess position he was studying, his expression a mixture of relief and deep concern. "Hello, Magnus," Anish said quietly. "I'm sorry it had to be this way, but I needed to make sure you came alone, and that no one could trace our meeting back to normal channels." "You're A.N.," Magnus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You sent those puzzles. You've been watching me, monitoring my investigation into the Chess Council." Anish nodded grimly. "For 3 months I've been trying to find a way to warn you without exposing both of us to immediate danger. The coded puzzles were the only safe method of communication I could devise." Magnus felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Betrayal, confusion, and oddly, relief. "Why didn't you just approach me directly? Why all the mystery?" "Because the Chess Council has been monitoring all of your communications for months," Anish replied, standing up from the board. "Phone calls, emails, even casual conversations in tournament halls. They know every person you've spoken to, every question you've asked about corruption in chess." The revelation hit Magnus like a physical blow. He had assumed his investigation was private, that his questions about tournament irregularities and suspicious betting patterns had gone unnoticed. But apparently, every move he made had been observed and documented. "How long have you known about them?" Magnus asked. Anish walked to the window, looking out at the Amsterdam streets with nervous energy. 2 years. I was recruited initially, offered substantial payments to provide information about other players' preparation methods and psychological states. They presented it as market research for chess promotion. Magnus studied his friend's profile, trying to read the truth in his expression. "But you realized it was something else when they started asking for specific information about you," Anish confirmed. "Details about your training routines, your relationship with coaches, your financial arrangements, questions that had nothing to do with chess promotion and everything to do with finding ways to control or eliminate you." The admission sent a chill through Magnus. The Chess Council hadn't just been monitoring him, they had been actively planning against him, using one of his closest rivals to gather intelligence. "What did you tell them?" Magnus asked, dreading the answer. Anish turned back to face him, and Magnus could see genuine remorse in his eyes. At first, general information that was already public knowledge. Tournament results, playing style analysis, things any chess fan could observe. But as their questions became more specific and personal, I realized they were building a comprehensive profile for purposes that couldn't be legitimate. Magnus sat down heavily at the chess table, processing the implications. "So you decided to warn me instead." "I decided to protect you," Anish corrected. "Magnus, you have no idea how deep this conspiracy goes. The Chess Council isn't just about tournament manipulation or betting schemes. They're part of something much larger. An Eastern European operation that's been infiltrating intellectual competitions across multiple disciplines." The phrase Eastern European operation struck Magnus as oddly specific. "What do you mean, Eastern European?" Anish pulled out an encrypted tablet and showed Magnus a map with dozens of marked locations across former Soviet states. "The Chess Council is just one branch of a network that stretches from Moscow to Zagreb. They've been systematically corrupting chess, poker, esports, and even academic competitions for over a decade. Magnus studied the map, noting the concentration of markers around certain cities. What's their ultimate goal? Control over intellectual merit-based competitions, Anish replied. They believe that by determining who succeeds in activities requiring strategic thinking and mental performance, they can influence broader patterns of social and political development. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. Magnus realized he wasn't just fighting for chess integrity. He was confronting a network that viewed intellectual competition as a tool for social engineering on a massive scale. There's something else you need to know, Anish continued, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper. They have a specific elimination protocol for you. Not physical elimination, something more sophisticated. They're planning to destroy your reputation through a carefully orchestrated campaign of false accusations and manufactured evidence. Magnus felt his blood run cold. What kind of accusations? Anish showed him documents that made Magnus sick to read. Fabricated financial records suggesting Magnus had been receiving illegal payments. Doctored communication logs implying he had been involved in match fixing. Even psychological evaluation reports claiming he was mentally unstable and prone to paranoid delusions. This is all fake, Magnus said. But even as he spoke the words, he realized how convincing the fabricated evidence appeared. Of course it's fake, Anish confirmed. But it's been created by professionals with access to sophisticated forgery technology. When they release this information through coordinated media channels, most people won't be able to distinguish it from legitimate evidence. Magnus studied the fake documents, understanding for the first time how vulnerable his reputation was to systematic attack. When are they planning to release this? That depends on how much of a threat you continue to pose, Anish replied. If you abandon your investigation and stop asking questions about chess corruption, they might decide you're harmless and leave you alone. But if you keep digging, the implication was clear. Magnus could save himself by accepting defeat and remaining silent about everything he had learned. But that would mean abandoning his responsibility to expose the truth about systematic corruption in competitive chess. There's something else, Anish said, producing another set of documents. I've discovered references to something called the Zagreb Master in their communications, someone who appears to be coordinating operations across multiple countries. Magnus examined the references, noting that they were always spoken about with apparent reverence and fear. Do you know who this person is? Not yet, Anish admitted. But based on the communication patterns, I believe the Zagreb Master is the real power behind the entire Eastern European operation. The chess council, the tournament manipulation, the player elimination protocols. It all seems to flow from decisions made by this individual. The revelation added another layer of danger to an already complex situation. Magnus wasn't just fighting a corrupt organization. He was confronting a network controlled by a mysterious figure with apparently unlimited resources and international reach. Why are you helping me? Magnus asked. What do you get out of risking your own safety to warn me about this conspiracy? Anish was quiet for a long moment before answering. Because I've seen what they do to people who threaten them, players whose careers were destroyed, journalists who asked too many questions and suddenly found themselves discredited, even officials who tried to investigate irregularities and were forced out of their positions. Magnus could see the genuine fear in Anish's expression. His friend had been living with the knowledge of this conspiracy for 2 years, watching from the inside as the network eliminated anyone who posed a threat to their operations. What do you think we should do? Magnus asked. We need to be extremely careful, Anish replied. The Zagreb Master has resources that extend far beyond chess. Intelligence networks, media manipulation capabilities, financial institutions. If we move against them directly, they'll destroy both of us before we can present any evidence. Magnus realized he was facing the most difficult decision of his life. He could continue his investigation, knowing it would make him a target for elimination by a sophisticated international conspiracy. Or he could retreat, accepting that chess would remain corrupted but preserving his own safety and reputation. "There is one possibility," Anish said carefully. "I've been documenting their operations for months, gathering evidence about their methods and personnel. If we could find a way to expose the Zagreb Master's identity and connect them to specific criminal activities, we might be able to bring down the entire network." Magnus looked at his friend, understanding that they were both about to cross a line from which there would be no return. "What would that require?" "Infiltrating their operations." "In Zagreb?" Anish replied. "Getting close enough to the Zagreb Master to document their activities and gather evidence that couldn't be dismissed or explained away." The proposal was extremely dangerous, but Magnus realized it might be their only chance to expose the full scope of the conspiracy threatening competitive chess and intellectual sports worldwide. "Are you willing to do this?" Magnus asked. Anish nodded grimly. "Magnus, if we don't stop them, there won't be any legitimate intellectual competition left. Everything will be controlled by people who view human achievement as nothing more than a tool for their own political and financial goals." As they prepared to leave the chess club, Magnus realized that his relationship with Anish had fundamentally changed. They were no longer just rivals or friends. They were allies in a war against forces that threatened everything they valued about competitive chess. But Magnus also knew that their mission to expose the Zagreb Master would test both of their limits and force them to confront dangers they couldn't yet imagine. The war for chess's soul was about to enter its most perilous phase.